Walk around. I got a little bit of water there, but that's right. That kind of got it stimulated. Down that wrong side of that. Oh, it's water. Here's a good example of how when the sin problem and the good, righteous situation of there had to be some kind of violence that took place to take care of the problem.
Oh, yeah.
So nature kind of sets up this cough reflex there that's really strong. Hit that upper windpipe. It didn't take much tickle with those.
Oh, yeah.
Respiratory. Those stratified lumbar epithelial cells.
No,
No. You can.
Okay, you can sit up front.
Liza, have you been missing the girl? How are you?
Is Judy gonna come sit by me?
Yeah, you're going to survive.
Okay, I'll sit right here.
Have we got started? I don't even know if we're
See if it's.
I can't tell if it's going. I see you on the screen.
We're recording, yeah, we're good.
All right, solid. Well, wait a second or two, or get started, or either way.
Is this live stream or Zoom?
I think it's Zoom. I don't know if it's a live stream on Zoom. But I think it's just recorded. It's a live stream.
Oh, I don't know.
I think so.
Usually it is.
Live stream. That's awkward. No, no, that's cool. All right. What we can do is we can start off with a word of prayer, and then we will jump in. All right. Let's bow our heads. Dearly Father, Lord, I just want to thank you so much just for this opportunity that we have to be able to connect together and to just learn a little bit when it comes to giving Bible studies. And I just want to pray that as we embark on this journey, that you may walk with us, that you may lead us, and that you may guide us, Father, that as we continue down this road, we may be able to grow in this area and be able to be better tools to be used by you, and to be able to create that space for you to work. Lord, we thank you. We praise in Jesus' precious name. Amen. So just a little mention that I want to kind of talk about before we jump into the Bible studies is when you give Bible studies, especially when you're initially beginning to give Bible studies, or when you're initially beginning to run a small group, one of the things that I wanted to mention kind of before we get into this topic is it's one of those things that you just have to do it. And the reason why I'm saying that is because sometimes we can try to prepare ourselves as much as humanly possible before we get into it, trying to learn everything and anything that it is to do it, but it's like learning how to swim. I mean, you could sit down and try to calculate how cold the water will be, what you have to do with your arms, calculate, okay, this is what it looks like, watch videos and YouTube videos on it, and learn from the best of the best. But the truth of the matter is the only way you're going to truly learn how to swim is if you get in the water, right? That is how you're going to learn how to do Bible study. It's going to be how you learn how to even do small groups of any kind. It's getting in there. So I just want to encourage you that as we're going through these classes, it may be like, we may get to the end of these classes and you'll be like, but I don't feel like I have enough, or I feel like I want to learn more, or maybe get fuller set into, the way this all works. But I'm here to encourage you. The best way to figure it out is getting in the water. It's by doing it. And this is something you can write down. It's the best way to getting a Bible study. Are you ready for this? This is the greatest, most powerful way to getting any Bible study. Are you ready? Ask. That's the best way to getting a Bible study, is ask. You would be surprised as to how people will respond if you simply just ask them, hey, would you be interested in Bible studies? Just that simple question could open the door to so much. And we'll talk a little bit about that. I'm going to share testimonies too down the road here. But I just wanted to encourage you, like, look, just ask, get in the waters, don't feel afraid, don't feel nervous. You may feel afraid, you may feel nervous, that's cool too. But get in it and learn proceeding from there instead of trying to gain all this knowledge and then jump into it, because that may get rocky. Anyways, so I just wanted to give a little bit of encouragement, like, hey, if you want to truly learn how to get Bible studies, get in the waters, jump in it, don't hesitate, have fun. Okay, so once you get that Bible study, right? So once you talk to somebody, you've had that conversation, and Bible studies can come across in so many different ways. Bible studies can come across the church, right? We may get a list of people who are interested in Bible studies. So that's cold contacts, right? These are people you have never interacted with, has never really interacted with the church, and that is how you could possibly get a Bible study. If you're like, hey, I'll be willing to take a name or two on that list and embark on some studies with them, right? So it may be a cold contact. It may be a contact that is somebody from your work, somebody that you know in passing, that you just simply ask them, hey, would you be interested in Bible study? Had a nice, conversation, and you're like, yo, this person seems interested. Hey, would you be interested in Bible studies? And you ask that person. You may have that semi-relationship. It may be somebody who's really close to you, right? It may be a family member, right? It could be somebody that's an uncle, an aunt, a niece, a nephew, a brother, a sister, and just asking them a question, hey, would you be willing to embark on Bible studies? It may be Bible studies in person. It may be Bible studies over the Zoom. It may be Bible studies over a phone call. There's so many different ways, so many different methods, so many different places that you can be in giving Bible studies. But all of those are options. But once you receive that Bible study, the question is, what kind of happens next, right? Like, how do we kind of get the train moving? How do we get our feet a little bit set so that when we get into the waters, we're not just flapping and standing in the same place, right? We want to kind of get some momentum going and some growth going. So how often should the Bible studies happen? That's a question that sometimes get asked often. Should they be 3 times a week, one every day? Should we try to knock these all out in 1 month? Should we do like 1 a month for the next 2 years, right? Like, how exactly should Bible studies be? And what has been educated to me and what I've kind of find is a good rhythm is once a week. I think being able to sit down once a week, mark off time once a week to be able to work with the person, and sometimes people don't really know how Bible studies work. So when you say, hey, do you want to do Bible studies? They think it's this big commitment, maybe every day. So a lot of times you give people relief. You say, hey, would you be interested in Bible studies? And if you see them saying like, it's like, it'd just be like once a week, whatever works best with your schedule, right? And you say a phrase like that, it kind of puts like, oh, once a week, and you'd work with my schedule. Oh yeah, I'd be interested in Bible studies. So there's like this little bit of a light breather where it's like, okay, I'll send you my schedule, we'll try to work something out. So doing stuff like that kind of opens the door and makes it comfortable, where it's like, okay, I can kind of plan my own schedule here. And so another one is like, how many studies should I give somebody at a time? All right. When you're doing Bible studies with them, you may get yourself a nice set of Bible studies, and maybe you'll get a set for them as well. And so you'll have these 2 sets of Bible studies. And so the temptation will be to hand over the Bible studies, right, and say like, okay, we're going to go through these together. But that's not the method. That's not the way, right? In John chapter 16, verses 12, Jesus says one of the phrases, and I sometimes, I use this phrase to, mess around with some families sometimes, but at the same time, I also really like this passage. And Jesus talking to the disciples here, and he says the phrase, I have many things to tell you, right? But you cannot bear them right now. And a large percent of that is because Jesus does incremental growth, right? Jesus isn't going to throw upon us like sometimes I stop and I ask myself the question, what would happen if in the beginning of my Christian walk, Jesus threw on top of me every little responsibility and thing that I had to get done and get done right in order to be the person that God's calling me to be? I can guarantee you that would overwhelm me to the max, and I would feel like I can't do this. I'll catch you next week, right? But Jesus doesn't work like that. What he does is he says, hey, are you willing to walk here? And then I get there, and Jesus is like, awesome, we made it. Congrats. Are you willing to walk here? And so what happens is there's this incremental growth. And the same thing happens with the Bible studies. There's a lot of stuff in that Bible studies that somebody could just pick up, a random one and say like, ooh, this one looks interesting, and I want to kind of read this and look at, oh, wait, what? It says this, it says that. And something you have to recognize about truth is develops over time, right? Like once you understand one foundation of truth, it helps you to understand the next foundation. And as you understand that foundation of truth, it helps you to understand the next foundation, and so on and so forth. So when those foundations aren't at the bottom, and you try to understand something up here, it's not going to make any sense to you whatsoever, because you haven't fully understand the core or the roots, right? And so these Bible study guides that I'll bring tomorrow. These Bible study guides, right, that we have, It Is Written, Amazing Facts, Truth Link, all these different Bible studies are just Bible studies that help to develop that incremental growth, right? That step-by-step truth growth. So we want to make sure that when we're going into a Bible study, we're not just giving off the whole package, but we're saying, hey, let's start off with this Bible study, and let's reconnect next week and we'll talk it over. But sometimes if you don't have that, sometimes just sticking with the one that you have. Get a Bible study and say like, hey, we can go over this together. If you have questions, we'll talk about it, and you just sit down with them and go through those studies. But either way, it wouldn't never advise for somebody to just hand off just a bunch of study guides and say like, all right, we'll catch up next week, because next week might come around and say, no, you guys are kind of strange. I don't know what all this is. It's kind of confusing. I don't understand this. Like, no. We're supposed to grow through this. So just kind of cut that process and just grow with them instead of trying to just hand stuff over and then.
So one at a time.
So one at a time is the answer, right? One Bible study at a time. You want to just be adding it on.
So would you say if it was the pamphlets, would you give next week's up front, or would you give it?
Oh yeah, I would always give it up front. I want them to look through that study, and then when we come together, more chances are not they're going to come maybe with a couple questions, a couple thoughts. But for the most part, what you'll find a lot of times is when you do studies with people and you give them the lesson, when it comes to the next week, they come not necessarily ready to drill you, because that might seem scary. Oh man, what if they come ready to just drill me with questions? They don't come necessarily willing to drill you. They come with this aspect of, no one has ever said this to me. Like that's a large majority of the percentage of situations that come up, right? It's like, no one ever explained this to me. Yo, the Bible is clear in what it says here, and they tend to see it for themselves. So when you go to the Bible study, it's actually a lot easier. They tend to have a lot more questions for their church, right? And then like, hey, we went through this and all these different questions. I mean, there's very few times where you'll run into situations where people will have questions about, oh, I didn't quite understand it, my pastor. But usually it's like someone's pastor kind of gave them a list of questions and they wrote those questions down, and it's like you can kind of tell those situations. But for the most part, when you're working with somebody, you can kind of show that they're sincere and they really want to know. Like, you'll notice that, and they'll always come back excited. They'll always come back like, yo, this stuff is amazing, because they can see it and they see it in Scripture. So, one at a time. Dish them out one at a time. How long should the actual study be? So this is like, when I say the actual study, I'm talking about the time spent in Scripture. I'm not necessarily talking about from the moment you walk in the door, because some people will try to live this by the law. That's not what I'm trying to say here. This is from the moment that you open up the Bible to the moment that you close the Bible with the word of prayer. Amen, right? And so this time frame is roughly about 30 to 45 minutes. And it can be longer, it can be shorter. But if you're thinking to yourself, okay, I haven't met this person before, I have no idea who they are, the last thing you want to do is to do a Bible study for 3 hours. That's the last thing you want to do.
Unless they want to.
Unless they want to, right? Like it all depends on the person, right? Some people, they may be curious, they may be excited, asking questions, and some studies will go a little bit longer. Some studies may be a little bit shorter, but for the most part, if you don't know the person and it's kind of quiet and you're not really sure and you're just gauging it, the best and safest place to be is 30 to 45 minutes. Not to go over 30, not to go over 45 minutes, and not to be too short where you're not saying enough, right? Not like 15 minutes in and out. But just enough where you're having an opportunity to go through scripture with them. And so this is the time frame spent in the actual Word of God, going through scripture from the beginning to the end of the scripture portion. I would spend 30 to 45 minutes. It's a good range. Again, you may have a deep, close relationship with this person, and you guys might be best friends. Hey, enjoy yourself. I wouldn't try to like keep it to a certain time frame, because that's your friend or that's your family member. You can tell whether they're interested or whether they're feeling it, whether they're not feeling it. You can kind of gauge that if you have a relationship with them. But if you don't have a relationship with them, the best bet is to go 30 to 45 minutes. I tend to try to hit the 30 mark personally, because I always would rather leave people wanting more than to have them be like, I wish she left 15 minutes ago. I just rather just like, look, let's just end and not necessarily to like rush the Bible study. Like if the questions are popping up and it's good conversation, let's converse, let's have a good time. But if I'm noticing like they're not extremely responsive and we're kind of just going through it, then it becomes, okay, I'm gonna hit this 30 minutes, and then we're going to come back and check next week and see how it all flowed. Are they still excited? They still want to do it? All right, let's do it. 30 minutes. And over time, sometimes my Bible studies end up just getting longer. Sometimes it's like, oh man, I'm here for like an hour and a half, 2 hours. But not the actual Bible study portion, just being at their house. But we'll talk about that in a second. The next thing is like, okay, so beginning the actual study. So this is after you've covered the ground. Giving them the Bible study, telling them to look at it after a week. You're coming in. The first kind of sit down meeting that I do with anyone, and this is, again, you have to kind of gauge this, and this is like kind of like the first study is, I like to do testimony. I like to take time just to go through people's testimony, go through like where they've been at, who they are, how they grew up, like family, just to get to know them a little bit. And for this one, you may find that when you do a Bible study with someone you have no idea anything about, like I'm talking about, you got that dry list and say, hey, give me 2 names, so I'll roll with it. You may find that maybe doing that the first Bible study, they may not be ready for those conversations, right? And so you have to learn how to kind of respect, okay, like this person may not be there, but being able to come in and get a testimony is good. And not a testimony like, hey, how has Jesus impacted their life? Because they may not have any idea. It's like, look, I just saw a flyer. I'm down to do some studies. Jesus hasn't touched my life. But being able to ask something of their testimony, something of like, hey, like, just tell me a little bit about yourself. Even if it's just that phrase, tell me a little bit about yourself. Or if that's even just opening up a little bit about yourself, just to be able to just get to know them a little bit, and just to be able to. So the first Bible study, I try not to focus too much on a core, like let's dive into this Bible study immediately, and like no, I'm just like, let me get to know you a little bit. And if you don't feel like the ground is ready for that, you can wait for a couple Bible studies down the road. So you can wait for the 5th Bible study or the 6th Bible study after you've kind of built a little bit of a relationship with them, and you find that they're actually interested, right? They're eager. They're like, I want to be a part of this. I like this material. You can get to a point and ask them, like, hey, tell me about yourself. I actually don't know as much about you as I feel like I do or did. And they're like, oh, okay. They may open up a little bit more about their life and their experience. But definitely getting to know them a little bit in the beginning will just give you a little bit of ground to play on, to build a relationship on. And I'll explain it this way. For example, say that the person is into the sport basketball, right? Like you notice, maybe see some things in the house, or maybe you see they said something about like, I'm a like Michigan State University fan. I'm not. I just said Michigan State University because that's the only university, right? But they're like I'm this big fan or whatever. And I'm not telling you you have to watch any games or anything. I don't want anybody leaving here saying like, oh, he told me I gotta watch this game. Like, no. But being a little bit in there where you even Google something like, hey, Michigan State games, like when was the last game they played? Oh, they played a game last week. And then you come in and you say that, hey, like how you feel about them winning the game?
If they lost, don't bring it up.
If they lost, don't bring it up. No, that's real. But the more you kind of get to know a little bit of them, the more you can play with it as you continue throughout the Bible study, throughout the experience. It's like, oh, this person likes this, or this person likes that, or they're big into chocolate. Maybe next week I can bring them some chocolate. I don't know. But like doing something where you're listening, but then you can show that you're listening. It's not just, and this is just in the context of making friends as well. This isn't just for Bible studies. This is the idea of building relationships. It's the idea of like saying this is beyond the Bible study, which kind of goes into the next thing, which is you want to care for the person. And this is very big. A lot of times when we think Bible studies, we think baptisms, right? Bible studies, baptisms. It may sound sad to say, but it's not just about baptisms. I wouldn't even say like if you go into a Bible study and your main focus is like, I want to dunk this person in the waters. If that's your main focus and priority, they're going to be able to tell. They're going to be able to kind of sense it, right? Can God still work through the Bible study? Oh, I have no doubts that God can still do something through the Bible study. I'm not going to try to say, oh, if you go in there with that mentality, God's not going to be able to do nothing. I'm not saying that. But I am saying that people can kind of tell, they can read, they can say like, okay, something's off here. I don't know what it is, but I can tell that this person has I can tell that I'm not the priority, or I'm not the one that's cared for here. They can feel that, they can sense that. So this is just some examples of things that you can do to show that you care. Because sometimes we may care, but it's like, how do I show that I care? Like, I care about this person. I just don't know how to communicate that in the best way. So you can show that before the Bible study. So when you go into the Bible study, could you imagine if somebody comes into the Bible study and they're like, oh man, nice to be here. Oh man, traffic has sat down. All right, so open up your Bibles.
Yeah.
It's straight up. Just open up your Bibles. We're digging in. It's almost like the sense of like, hey, this man just barged in my house and told me to open up the Bible. Like, okay, like, I mean, I'm down. I know you're here for the Bible study, but are we friends? It's almost like, they don't care about them as an individual. They don't care about anything about what they've been through. Nothing. Just boom, Bible study. Let's get it. All right, sweet, awesome Bible study. I'm out. All right. So before the Bible study, you can show that you care. And I put down some examples of how you can show that you care by asking some questions. How have you been? Like, how are you as an individual? And when you ask this, I would advise, and it, again, depending on the house you're going to, if you're going to a house where you do not know the person at all, zero, you have no friendship, no relationship, they don't come out to the church, they don't come out to prayer meeting, like this is just a cold turkey, you just walk in their door and you're doing studies with them. I would even advise that you take the physical Bible and you put it like to the side somewhere. And you sit back, right? You sit back with the Bible all the way over, you sit back, maybe cross your leg, maybe just relax, like show that you're chilling, there's no rush. And just ask, how have you been? Like is everything going okay? Like when you do that, people notice like this Bible's over there. He looked mad relaxed. He actually wants to know my answer. He actually wants to know the answer. Versus, so how you been? This is like, be quick because we're about to jump in. Like, how you been? All's well? No, we're gonna be starting in John. Right? It's like this. Okay, right? And so you wanna make sure that when you come in, and I'm not saying you have to do what I just did. You could do whatever makes the most sense for you. This is just a recommendation where I hey, put my Bible down. I want this person to know I'm fully engaged. When I say, how are you? I'm genuinely concerned about the answer. Like, how are you? Everything's good? Okay, I'm glad to hear that. And so you engage in that conversation. You can ask like, hey, what are you up to? Like what have you been up to? Work, family, children, life. Like what's been happening in your life? Or one of my favorites. Tell me something cool that happened to you this week. Like if you really need conversation starters, like if you really need something to kind of get it, like, hey, tell me something cool that happened to you this week. Is there something cool? And they may say, nah, nothing really cool happened to me this week. I was all like, well, tell me something boring that happened to you this week. I don't know, like tell me something. I'm just curious to know like how your week has been. I mean, people would be like, this guy's weird, but he actually wants to know something about my week. Oh, this happened or whatever. And take mental notes of that. Don't just ask and be like, oh, cool, let's dive into the word. But actually have conversation off of it. And the person that kind of mentored me told me that he said, do your best to do at least 15 minutes of conversation before the Bible study. It may seem like a lot, but he says, do your best to do 15. You'll find that sometimes it's hard. With people you don't really know, it may be hard to reach for that 15. Right. But reach as far out for the 15 as you can. It may be 5 minutes. It may be 10 minutes. You may be able to reach the 15, but reach out for that 15. And then after you're done, you can just sum it up with a simple, oh man, that's awesome to hear that. Well, let's get into the study for today. And I'm super excited for it. It's a really good one. I feel like you're going to like the study for today. You could just say, just something on the lines of the study today. It's just an easy transition going into the study. The next thing is not just.
I heard one time a doctor say, somebody's patient should come to spend time with him, and sometimes even in medical school, so they say at the same time you're coming in to examine them, they're also examining you on the first visit to see if they're going to come back.
No, that's true, right?
The same principle would apply here, but anyway, I remember this one doctor said, well, they may not remember what you told them, but they'll remember how you made it feel.
Oh yeah. No, that's definitely true. I've heard that several times. People remember very well how you make them feel like versus what they say.
What is the blank when you see they have become really engaged in the studies? Blank for the person.
Oh, care for the person. Sorry, that's.
And what was the first Bible study?
Oh, it's the testimony. Just getting to know them a little bit, getting their testimony, getting their story a little bit. So you want to care for the person. So the first is before the Bible study, you can show that you care simply by asking questions, asking them to tell you something about their day.
Are you asking them for a testimony?
Yeah. When I say you're asking them for a testimony, you're asking them to tell them a little bit about yourself. And I'll explain that just a little bit more too, because somebody could have came up to you and said, hey man, I really want to do Bible studies. Can you do Bible studies with me? That may happen. Someone may come up to you and say, can you do Bible studies with me? Now, if somebody comes up to me and says, can you please do Bible studies with me? An alert goes off on my mind. What got them to the point that they're eager to do Bible studies right now? There's a testimony. There's something that happened. There's something they saw. There's something they experienced that got them to a point where they want to do Bible studies. Or somebody that comes to the front of the church and says, hey, I want to give my life. What was it that made that transition? What was it that made that? It maybe not be a testimony like, I know the Adventist church and I know all the beliefs and I want to, this is my journey in my faith. Like, no, it may be something simple. It's like, I felt the Lord pulling and tugging on my heart and I've been fighting it for months. That's a testimony. I mean, it's like a 3-second testimony, but that's a testimony where, so it may be a testimony like that, or it may be somebody that has no clue. They saw an ad that said Bible studies. They said, why not? They clicked the link. That person still has a story. They may not have a testimony or like this grand, profound, like, God, took me out of this life and brought me into this one. It may not be that way, but it may be like, my story is, I grew up in a house with blank amount of brothers and sisters, and my dad was a preacher, but I never paid attention to anything, and I don't know, I'm just interested in Bible studies. That might be their story. And it's like, that's cool, man. That's really cool. I'm excited that you decided to follow that leading, and now we're about to embark. And so just by asking them for their story, asking them for their testimony, if it's somebody that you don't know, I would go with story. If it's somebody that came up to you and begged you for Bible studies, I would ask for a testimony. Because, if they're eager for Bible studies, chances are it's a testimony. So that's kind of that aspect of
Yeah, some people won't know what testimony means if they're not
yeah.
religious people. all the
Yeah,
way.
exactly. Some people won't even know what testimony means. They'd be like, "My testimony? Are we in court? Like, what are you talking about?" But yeah, so if you don't know them too well, or they're not, you can ask, "Hey, tell me your story."
Could you put it like, I'm here to do, I got assigned to do a Bible study with you. How is it that it came to me that you wanted a
Yeah,
Bible study?
exactly. That's the perfect way to do it. You can say like, "Hey, what impressed you for Bible study? So what got you to that point?" And knowing that is really good too. And the reason why I say that is because when you do Bible studies with people, and I remember I was doing a Bible study in Keene at Southwestern, and the person dropped off. Like he completely dropped off, didn't lost contact, and I reached out to him, and eventually I got a phone call, or eventually I got connected to him. When I got connected, I was like, "Hey man, still let you know you can have Bible studies, or you're still offered to do Bible studies." And his response was kind of like, don't really know the time and all this. And you can just easily just remind them the reason why they began. You can say like, "Hey, listen, I totally understand, but I just want to encourage you. When you started this journey, this was you were impressed, and I want to encourage you to continue. But if you don't, that's okay too." So you want to make sure to give them that option to let them know like, "Hey, I encourage you. I can work with your schedule, whatever it may be." Sorry, that's for another time. I'm getting into the material. But so before the Bible study, right, you can ask them all these questions just to show that you care. But it's not just before the Bible study, it's also during the Bible study. And I say this because there has been times where I've done Bible studies with somebody and I could tell that they weren't the same. Like before, like when we were doing the Bible study, they'd be like, "Oh, that's so cool. Man, this reminds me of this, that." And they're just talking throughout the Bible study. And then all of a sudden we're doing another Bible study maybe after like 3 or 4 times, and they're just, what's the verse? and it's almost like a different person. It's like, who is this, right? And so our natural inclination is like, okay, they must not like the study. They must not like me. They must have gotten tired. Did they find out some truth? We try to build all this stuff in our heads, but slow down. Something could be happening in their life. Something could have been impacting them, and they just forgot the study was today, and they're like, "Man, I should have canceled this thing, but I don't want to cancel on this guy." And so they invited you in because they probably felt bad. And what I'm trying to say, what I'm trying to help us do is look at less of ourselves and look at them. They're going through something. They're dealing with something. In those moments, it's extremely appropriate to do one of these numbers. Right? Like, probably not like that because I'd be looking at you like, "Why you just do that?" Right? But simply just stopping like, "Hey, is everything all right?" And they may say like, "Yeah, everything's okay," because that's a natural response, right? And so they say that you should do at least 3 attempts in order to get it, right? In order to get the answer. I don't know if that's true or not, but I've heard that. Yeah, I don't know if that's true or not, but you should do at least 3 attempts, right? You ask, "Hey, is everything all right?" They say, "Yeah, everything is all right." It's like, well, the only reason why I'm asking is because usually you seem, energetic. Today you seem kind of low energy. Are you sure? And they say, "Yeah, And then the last one, and this is my favorite one, I just reach out. "Well, if you need anything, I just want to let you know that I'm here if you want to talk." Like, I know we do these Bible studies and stuff, and it's cool, but I also care about you.
And they start crying.
And they start crying. No, but but what that does for a person is it gives them permission to know. It allows them to know that they have permission to close their Bibles and we can just have a conversation if we need to.
Right.
Because this Bible study can wait till next week.
Right.
What they're going through, what they're dealing with, may not be able to wait till next week. And so when you do that, you slow down, you extremely show they care. It's like, look, I'm not just trying to baptize you by March. Like, that's not what I'm trying to do, right? Like, I actually care about you. I want to make sure that you're okay. I want to make sure that family life is going well. I want to make sure that home life is okay. I want to make sure that whatever needs you have is being met. I want to make sure if I can even stop in the middle of this thing and pray for you, I'll stop in the middle of this thing and pray for you. But I want you to know that I care. And after that, I wouldn't push it anymore. Because if somebody doesn't want to share, they don't want to share. But as long as you give them that space to be able to share, you've opened that up. And it's totally fine for you to stop a Bible study to ask how a person is doing. Point blank. It's cool. I'm just letting you know, just in case you're like, oh man, I feel like I should be saying something, or I feel like I continue the Bible study. I feel like I'm letting God
wrap
down.
it up. Let's just move quickly
Let's just
through.
move quickly through this thing and get out, right? It's like, no, you're allowed to stop the Bible study and to ask them how they're doing. And my favorite is after the Bible study. You can show a lot before, you can show a lot during. After the Bible study, I've noticed tends to have a bigger effect on people, especially people you don't know, after the Bible study. When I say that, I'm saying you just met this person, you had a study or two with them, maybe 3 or 4. They've told you a little bit about their lives, maybe not super deep detail, but maybe at the end of each Bible study, you've asked them if there's a prayer, right? You say like, hey, can I pray for you? Or is there anything I can pray for? And they may mention stuff. They may mention stuff from, oh, my son has a soccer game next week. My mother's ill. This situation is something I'm going through. Could you pray for this, that? When they mention stuff, after the Bible study is really when you begin to find ways to build that relationship. Because when you come back to the Bible study and you start with, hey man, how's your mom? She feeling better? When you come back to the Bible study, you say, oh, hey, how was your son's game? How did it go? Like, by asking those questions, it's like, was this, you thought about me? Like, why you left? You don't just think about me when you're here? I'm not just like one of the numbers that you have on your list that's like, that you just pop in and do a study and dip out, right? Because a lot of times people, when they see a person coming in to give Bible studies, they think of that person as like some pastor or some extremely Bible college student. Like they have all these thoughts because they don't know anything, so they're coming in. And so when you come in and you have extra care from, hey, how was that game, or how was this, or hey, I know you mentioned you like banana bread. My mom made some, and I thought I'd bring some over, right? Like you do stuff like that, and people are like, wow, like you tell them like, hey, yo, I saw the game, it was crazy, I was thinking about you. It's like those things make imprints on people's heart where they're like, this person actually thinks about me outside of these walls. This person actually cares for me outside of these walls. And again, all of these things, because sometimes people are like, I care about this person, but how do I show I care? These are ways that you show you care. There could be a plethora of ways, right? Just like many different directions that you can go. But this is how you can show somebody that you care, not just for Bible studies, but also just in church, also at work, also just people you connect with, people that you talk with. If you really want to build relationships, this whole section right here is really just building relationships. So that's kind of like during the Bible study, after the Bible study, before the Bible study, and things to keep in mind for the relationship portion. So now jumping down to the methods during the Bible study, this is more say how you conduct the Bible study, okay? So this is how we're going to fashion, work through a Bible study. And so the first thing that I mentioned is mix and mash Bible studies. Mix and mash them. Have fun with them. Especially if it's your first and second Bible study, I definitely would read just as many of those lessons as I can. I'm not saying go through the whole, the whole set, but maybe if you're, say you get, in 2 weeks from now, you're like, okay, I think I'm maybe having a Bible study in about 2 weeks. Sit down with Amazing Facts. It is written in Truth Link, the first Bible studies for all of them, and just see how people do their first lessons and get a feel for it and be like, oh, okay, like I like how this starts with this, but I like how it starts with this idea. I'm gonna take this first part and I'm gonna work with this first part, and then I'm gonna work off of this main lesson, right? And so now you're looking at different lessons and you're saying to yourself, okay, I really like this, I resonate with this, and I resonate with that. Because when you go into a Bible study, the most unique part of the Bible study is not the study you use, it's you. You are the most unique part of your Bible study because God is using you. So the reason I'm saying this is because if something resonates with you, if something makes sense for you, if you understand, like, man, this study makes clear sense for me, I love it. If it makes sense for you, or I like this portion, I like the way they end here, but this is my favorite format for Bible study. God is going to use you and the way that you think, the way that you process, the way that you understand to conduct that Bible study. If it makes sense to you, right? Like if it's fully understanding to you, like I grasp what this study is saying, then you're going to have no problem going into that Bible study and having a good time. Because it makes sense to you. You understood it. You comprehended it. But if you just take a Bible study because someone recommended it to you and you're just like, oh, I'm just gonna kind of go with this one, and you haven't really filled it out, or you haven't really like filled it out physically or filled it out like emotionally or spiritually connected with it, then you're gonna go into that Bible study and they're gonna ask you a question on that study, and you're gonna be like, I don't know, right? Like it's like I didn't really, connect with this study, but I'm not gonna say that. It's weird, but there's just like this disconnect that exists. So I encourage people to mix and match, have fun with. If there's a set of studies that you really like, take that study and go with it. If there's a portion that you really like the way they started that out, because it's like, this is how I would start out if I was to take that beginning portion and say, I'm gonna start my studies with this. I'm gonna go into the natural form of this, and then I'm gonna end with this study right here because I like the way this person does their appeals, right?
But you're talking about using the same study, different series, but the same general lesson, not jumping around. From lesson to lesson.
Not jumping from lesson to lesson. This is all like, for
Yeah, like
example,
don't take one from Amazing Facts and then next week take one from It Is Written.
Oh yeah. No. You need to stay
set.
with the same set all the way through the study. There was only one time where I used a different set, but it was for a very specific purpose, which I could probably explain later down the road. But think about it this way. Daniel chapter 2 is really a very normal to start lesson. So what I do is I start with It Is Written, and I kind of use I use It Is Written studies for all my studies. But I start with the It Is Written, but the way that I don't end the way It Is Written ends. There was another Bible study that I ran across, and I'll share it with you guys tomorrow when I bring all the lessons. But the way they ended their study on Daniel 2, I was like, forever, the rest of my life, I'm ending Daniel chapter. Like I have it memorized. Like I don't even have to, I didn't have to look at the lesson. I just, turn to the scriptures because it resonates the best with me, and it resonates the best with me when it comes to Daniel chapter 2. So that's what I mean when I say, mix and match. It's usually just stick with one lesson, go through that series. But if there's things that you like in other lessons, pull from that. Don't just commit yourself to one lesson. Mind you, I've done many Daniel lessons. I've done maybe a handful of Bible studies. I'll just say that. I've done a handful of Bible studies before I ran across that text. And I've always done Daniel chapter 2, and it's always been a blessing. So it's not to say that you can't, be blessed from doing that lesson. It's just when I found something else that ends in a way that I resonated with, like that has impacted and touched my life. Now, every time I do that study, it's like God speaks to me again. It's like, don't forget that lesson. It's like, I can't, because it's like, I got it embedded in this Bible study. And so the more you add to it, the better it ends up being for you. So the next part, it talks about, you want to grab the question from the Bible study, and then the answer you want to grab from the Bible. All the answers from your Bible studies, because usually the Bible studies will have a question attached with it. And so when you're asking the question, you can simply say, what does this text tell us about God's love, right? And so you ask that question, what does this text tell us about God's love? The answer should always come from the Bible, right? We should never come up with our own theories. We should never come up with our own thoughts. We never should, sway the person by our, whatever. Like everything should always come from the Bible. So it leads us to the next thing, which is to keep them in the text. So when the person goes to answer the question, you want to keep them in the text.
In the Bible.
In the Bible, yeah. You want to keep them in the text. You want to keep them in the Bible. And I want you to turn with me John chapter 3. John chapter 3, verses 16. And I want us to go to the text because I want us to see how this works. You see, a lot of times what happens when you're doing a Bible study is the question will be something on the lines of, what does this text tell us about those who believe in Jesus, right? Or in the Son of God. And so once that question is asked, they'll read the text. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have everlasting life. And then you stop again and you ask them the question, what does this text tell us about those who believe in him, or in the Son, in Jesus? What does the text tell us? What you'll find is people will say, the text tells us that God loves us, he's good.
I didn't answer the question.
Right? And they're just like, and so what you want to do is you want to do your best to make sure the words that come out of their mouth comes from the Bible, right? Because you'll notice people will say all sorts of things. So say like, it tells us that faith is strong even though when we're weak. You're laughing, but I'm serious. I'm being serious with you. You sit down with somebody, you just ask them simply, what is the text say? And the phrase that was always encouraged for us to use is, what does the text say? Like, what does the text say? And you may feel like when you embark on some Bible studies, like we'll start to have conversations because you'll begin to see people will really go all over the place. People will say stuff, my pastor told me that, hey, my dad said, it's all like, what does the Bible tell us? Says for those who believe. And so the goal is to get them, it says, whoever believes in him should not perish but have everlasting life. That's it. Right? Like the text gives us the answer. You want to do your best to make sure every time that the Bible study asks a question, or every time there's a question asked, you get the answer from the text. And that they read it. Like if they're reading it, you're doing perfect. Because the goal is, and the goal of this is, you want the person to learn how to read the Bible for themselves. They were probably raised where somebody told them answers all the time. And they were fed answers all the time. And now they're learning to see it right there. Oh, it says that the people, and you're teaching them how to do this by continuing to point it back to the word. Oh, the Bible says that whoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. So now they're not just up here in the theological world, right? Or like theory world. They're in the practical text where the Bible tells me what happens to them. They don't perish, they have eternal life. It says it right there. And the goal is to get them to a point where like now, anytime somebody asks them a question, they're already habitually, they're not over here saying, oh, my pastor, oh, going off in some like, poetic stuff. But they're coming, oh, the text says this. Oh, that's what the text says.
So what's the answer here? What does the text say? You've got a space and then a slash and then a space. So
okay, that's going to the next thing. But the first thing I just wanted to make sure we keep in mind is keep them in the text. You want to make sure you keep them here, keep them in the text, keep them in the word every single time. And this is something you can practice when you go through the study yourself. What does the Bible say when it comes to this thing? Okay, this is what the Bible says. So when you go into the Bible study, you know exactly what you're looking for. You're looking for them to say that Bible text. Because you don't want them to quote their pastor, you don't want them to quote themselves, you don't want them to go with what they feel like it says. No. What is written? It is written. See, that's why I go with it is written now.
I have a question. I mean, these people, even if they believe that, if they're out murdering or something like that, they can't do that. It's conditioned.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't just say, because they believe. I mean, go and sin no more. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's probably further down the text of the Bible study.
Yeah,
You just brought an example.
And that's an example. The idea is to get them to get their answers from the Bible. You want to make sure that they're not getting their answers from what they feel like, because that's the danger. If you're getting your answers from what you feel like the answer is saying, or I feel like the text is saying this, I feel like the text is saying that. My pastor told me the text says this. Well, you have the Bible right there.
What does the Bible
What
say?
does the Bible say? And so when you're teaching them to do that, they learn how to get their answers from the Bible and not from their feelings. They get the answer not from, or they get their answer not from their feelings, but from the Bible. They get their answers not from what their pastor says, but the Bible. They get their answers. So when you do that every single time, you just teach them how to look at the Bible. That's all you're really teaching them, right? And so that's kind of that's like the first foremost part of the Bible study. You want to teach them how to get the answers from the Bible, not from some other theory or some other place.
And we have to be careful about that ourselves, because sometimes we read a text and we've thought something about it for years, and that's not really necessarily what the text says.
Yeah, and that's true. And that's why I feel like the Bible study guides really help. The Bible study
Keeps us
guides,
focused.
the Bible study guides does a really good job at keeping us focused, keeping us centered. And that's why I say just read a lot of them. Like read a Bible study here, read a Bible study there. It gives you that full scope of, okay, these are good Bible studies that we see, in the Adventist church, and they've been used all over, and they work, right? And you'll begin to see that, at least for myself, I began to see that as I continue doing Bible studies, my Bible studies have grown. And when I say that, I'm just saying I've compiled, and if I do a Bible study, it's always different, and I tend to cater it towards the person, right? And based upon their experience, how much they're experienced with the Bible, do I spend more time in this area? Do I spend more time in that area? Just based upon the person, just because of experience. I didn't start off doing that. I just took the books, took the normal Bible study, and I went through it. But because I've done them so many, over and over, I mean, I haven't done them so many times. I just want to make sure people understand. It's not like I'm a professional or something. I've done them for sure less than 20, more than 10. I'll tell you that. But it's just I've gained a little bit of, ground and footing in that. And so when you use the Bible study guide, that's the best method to go. If you're making your own Bible studies, I would caution you because these studies that are made have been strategically designed to help people in that building process. And so if you go off in another direction, people may get confused, and if you don't know how to if you don't have that foundation, you may get lost in it. And so I mean, that's just recommendations. So the next thing I wanted to explain is testimony, experience, and illustration.
Wait a minute. So what does the text say? What is it?
So that's the question that you ask them. So when they're going off on a tangent.
So what do you put in the blanks?
Oh, sorry. This is going to the next point.
It's a new point.
It's a new point. Forgiveness. Yeah.
You haven't gotten there yet?
Yeah, that's what I'm on right now. So for this blank, it's testimony and experience. And alongside of that, I would include illustrations. And so this is part of the Bible study that is the most personal. Right?
Testimony, experience, what else did you say?
Testimony, experience, and I would also include illustration. So when I'm saying this, what I'm saying, for example, this is the point where you have your personal experience, your personal testimony, maybe illustrations that have come to you in the past. This is your opportunity to share them. So after you've gone through a question, after you've answered it with the Bible text, what then can happen is you can, if you so desire, and I want to do this over every single text, but definitely include at least 2 personal experiences or 2 testimonies within your Bible study. When I say that, I'm saying it can be something on the lines of Sabbath. For Sabbath, I use a testimony. I use the testimony of a time when I was working, and it was at a clothing store, and it was an awesome experience. It was an amazing job. I had awesome friends. It was amazing. But then they started telling everybody they had to work on Sabbath. You had to do I think it was at least 2 Sabbaths a month, every person. I told the person that I can't. I was like, I'm a Seventh-day Adventist. I can't do it. And then they told me that they may have to let me go. And I said, if you're going to have to let me go, you're going to have to let me go, but I can't. And so the manager didn't want to let me go. And so they talked to the upper people and tried to work it out. And they told me, if you're willing to work 1 Sabbath a month, we'll keep you. I told them, I was like, I wish I could, but I can't. I love y'all, but I can't. And so I left that job, and it was a sad experience, but I was joyful because I was all like, God, like you're who I work for at the end of the day. And what's crazy was a week later, I got offered a job at the school at Great Lakes Academy. Somebody had dropped out, and they offered me to hop in that place, and I was like, yo, praise the Lord. And so I got into that job, and that job set me up to be where I am today, right? Like I wouldn't have been here, right? And so the reason I use that, share that testimony, is because that testimony tends to lead to conversations. It tends to lead to it's like, man, that's intense. Like, oh, how was that job experience? How was it feel? And what happens is people begin to see like, oh, like they see it in the flesh. It's not just biblical, long time ago, Christianity, cool stuff, Bible, but it's like, oh, you're actually doing this stuff.
Yeah.
Like this stuff is a part of your life. I've sometimes even when it comes to the Sabbath, I like to use the illustration, and this is more moving in the form of illustration. I like to use the illustration of a date night, right? I use the illustration of a date night, like the Sabbath is like a date night with God. It's like a date with God, sanctified time to just grow in our relationship. And when people are like, oh, I never thought of it like a date night, or I never thought of it like that. And so after you've gone through the text, and after you've seen, okay, this is what the Bible says, this is what the Bible says, being able to bring it into 2021 is very important. And that's why I said at least 2 testimonies. It could be a mix of all of them, but at least a testimony, at least an experience, at least an illustration where people can see like, oh, it's not just 2,000 plus years ago, but this is applied to today, and we're actually called to live this out, and just share it and say, yeah, it was a wonderful experience. And so leading into the next question, and you can just jump into the next question. If they have questions, they'll ask you. If not, you just keep running with it. But it just makes your testimony, your experience, your illustrations make that Bible study unique. I gotta hurry up and get through this. Be with me. All right, so for people that tend to talk a lot, bring them back to the text, right? And this tends to happen more times than not, right? You may experience moments and times where people will just go on and on. It's like, yo, by this time it's gonna be midnight before we go into this. Bring them back to the text. These are just some avenues that I have personally used, and they work wonderfully, right? Just saying, you see, that's exactly what we see here in the text, right? Where you pull out the Bible. That's exactly what we see here in the text, right? And then you just continue the Bible study, and then people are just like, oh yeah, and then all of a sudden they're on that page. And so being able to say like, hey, this is exactly what we see in the text is a nice phrase. Sometimes they may go off, and it may not even be 100% related to
50%.
Yeah, it might not even be 50% related to the text, right? Like they've gone off, and theologically there's some stuff in there that's like I use the phrase I'm like this is the phrase, it's like that's pretty much in a sense kind of what the Bible's saying here, but in this context, and so I'll try to correct it, and so I'll try to put it to fit back to the text. So every time you interrupt, you're just saying like, ooh, like I see what you're saying there. May not be 100%, but I see what you're saying there. and so I want to take us back to the text because it's kind of what you're saying, but in this light, right? And so you just kind of fix it, correct it back, and then continue throughout the Bible study. As you use those phrases, and it may not be even relevant at all. And so that's why I put this one. Just be like, yo, that's really cool. That's cool. That's crazy. Yeah. You see, the next question says here, and you'll be surprised. People, and the thing is, especially with people that talk a lot, and I know this because I talk a lot, so I'm fooling, and it's we a minute over. I'm still talking, right? But with people that talk a lot, they don't get extremely offended when you interrupt them. They don't. They're not extremely offended. They're not like, oh, how dare you interrupt me, right? It tends to be people who are quiet that get a little bit offended when you interrupt them. because they don't speak a lot, and when they're finally speaking, you're not letting them speak, right? They tend to get a little, right? But people who talk a lot, they don't mind to get interrupted and to be like, if they're passionately saying something, right? About something emotional, lock in, be there in that moment. I'm not trying to say to cut them off, but if you notice, it's like, man, this person going in, just lightly interrupt them. Yo, that's awesome, that's amazing, that's cool. I like what you're saying. And so going back to the text, and just simply just saying, go back to the text is the perfect transition to be able just to move them back into like their exciting world, into like, okay, let's go into the text. Otherwise, I'm never gonna leave you. Right? And then the next one I wanted to mention is don't jump into other lessons. Stick with the lesson you are doing, right? And with this phrase, I simply say the phrase, hey, we're going to go over that in another lesson, right? Like some people may get really excited and you may go over the study on the coming of Christ and how, or let's go with the state of the dead, right? You go over that study with them, state of the dead. Well, so where are they, right? Like they sleep, and so what's heaven and what's hell? Like they got all these questions, and you're like,
say, let's go back to the text, John 16:12.
John 16:12. Hey, I'm going to let you know. No, but to be able to slow down and say like, hey, I know you got a lot of questions, but I promise you, it's about to get exciting. It's like just to tell them like, hey, I know you're excited. It's about to get exciting. It's about to get fun. We're going to talk about that in a couple lessons coming up. That'll be one that you don't want to miss. It's going to be a lot of fun. Because a lot of times they're connecting with the truth. They're connecting with it. They see it. They believe it. They're like, man, this is clear. This is concrete. I love it. But wait, what happens with all these? And there's been times where I've told them like, oh, you're going to be excited for that one. Just wait. Like we're going to talk about that one in a couple lessons coming up. And you'll see them. They'll be like, man, you just like doing that, don't you? Because the more you do, the more they start asking all these questions. And you'll just keep telling them, hey, we're going to talk about that. Hey, don't worry. We're going to get to that. And they're just all like, oh, man. And they're excited for the next one. They're excited for the next one. So you could use it as cliffhangers to get them to come back. It's like, we're going to talk about that. It's going to be a lot of fun. You don't want to just be like, you don't want to look startled and be like, because maybe you haven't fully studied that lesson. But just be confident. Tell them, hey, we're going to go over that next time. We're going to go over that together. Just give us a couple more studies. So you don't want to go to other lessons. Just stick with the lesson that you're doing. And then the last one I want to kind of mention for this is keep Jesus at the center of the study. And in John 12 verses 32, we're here in John. We can just read it real quick. John chapter 12. Verses 32, Jesus says the phrase, if I am what? Lifted up from the earth, will draw all peoples to myself. Right? So doctrines aren't the main point. We may be coming in here thinking like, I gotta hit this doctrine head. Doctrines aren't the main point. And that's why I say to look at a bunch of studies, because a lot of studies, when you go through all these different studies, you find like, oh man, I like the way this one lifts up Jesus. I like the way that one lifts up Jesus. And I like the way this one runs through the actual doctrine. So you may mix them together. You may work them together. You may, try to figure out how to best go through it. But doctrines aren't the main point. They lead us to the main point, Jesus. Doctrines are just telling us about God. That's all they're really doing. They're telling us about God. They're telling us about how God and our relationship works. It's just information when it comes to God and us. And so I want to encourage us that as we study, ask yourself the question: what does this doctrine have to do with the main point of Jesus? And keep that center focus, especially when you come to the end of that. When it comes to the appeals, which we'll be talking about tomorrow. Keeping Jesus at the center. Keeping Jesus at the center of the Bible study, keeping Jesus at the center of not just the Bible study, but also the relationship in the person that you're doing the Bible studies with. Keep Jesus at the center of it all. that will help us because it's really not supposed to be on us. It's not supposed to be just strictly on another person. It's not supposed to be just strictly even on the doctrine that you're studying. It is on Jesus. And when you keep that central focus, the doctrine will be lifted up. Because if Jesus is lifted up, he's going to lift up that doctrine. Like, that's important, right? You need to know that. But if Jesus isn't lifted up and the doctrine is, we're not going to like the outcome, right? We're going to have people who are just in love with truth, lowercase t, and not truth, capital T, Jesus. And so I put on there just the things to remember, because this is going to be, this is the things to remember throughout this whole thing. And we already went over these verses, so I'm gonna just run through these real quick. You're gonna make mistakes. You need to know that. There's gonna be times when you're gonna go into a Bible study and just jump into the Bible study and be like, oh man, I didn't even ask them how they were doing, right? Like, and now you're gonna be like, I'm freaking out, like, Lord, oh man, I can't believe I didn't ask them how they were doing. Maybe you can ask them after.
I missed Psalms 34, 24, not 34.
I messed up again. I need to correct that. Hey, I'm just, Lord help me, making mistake after mistake. But you're gonna make mistakes, and that's okay. But I want you guys, and I need to remind myself this too, where God can work through our mistakes. God will uplift us. If we're dedicated and we do our best and we make mistakes, that's okay. Those are healthy mistakes. Now, if you go into a Bible study and you're not prepared and you don't, you're just like, whatever, I'm about to just do this thing, and you make mistakes, it might have been better to sit down and go through the Bible study yourself first, right? There are things that we could have done to prevent it. And so if that's the case, like, no, do your part. But once you've gone through the Bible study, once you've like, Lord, I'm excited for this work, and you make mistakes along the way, those are opportunities to grow. Those are opportunities to learn. Those are opportunities to grow in your confidence in the Lord. The next thing is it will be fun. It will be enjoyable. God is going to exceed above what you can even imagine. God is going to do something. And you can be confident and excited about what God is going to do. So when you go into this Bible study, whether you're going with somebody you have no clue who they are, now that's an adrenaline rush, right? You walk into somebody's house, you don't even know who they are, right? And that going in with the mindset like, no, this is going to be fun. This is going to be an adventure, right? Or if it's with somebody that you've known for a long time, it's like your best friend. It's like, man, I've been waiting for this time for this experience. You may be a little bit nervous, but you can go in with some confidence that it's going to be fun because God is going to exceed what we can even imagine. And last but not least, God will bless you and them. When you go into the study, and I'll be real. One of the biggest reasons why I personally like Bible studies is because it does something for me. I know it sounds selfish, right? It does something for me in my relationship with God. I come to find that when I give Bible studies, after I leave a Bible study, I feel enriched with God's presence. I feel renewed. I feel like, man, like we just went through some scripture and, I went over this verse and I forgot about that verse and God reminded me that he's with me and that he's there and that he cares. And I feel energized and excited. And so we can know without a shadow of doubt, we're going to be blessed with this study as well. And they're going to be blessed. And if we can walk in confidence, not confidence in ourselves, but confidence in God and what he's doing. So this study kind of goes over kind of like the more when you're in the study. And I encourage you guys to keep these and just kind of refer back to them as you guys embark on some study. It's gonna be.
What should this Psalm just be? It's
24.
It's not
37.
37.
37, 24. Yeah, so I just want to encourage you guys, again, the best way to get into a study is just to ask. Don't forget that, please. You just ask. Simple. Complex, but simple, right? But yeah, so we can close with a word of prayer, and then we get it. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, I just want to thank you so much for this time, for this opportunity that we have to be able to learn a little bit about giving Bible studies. And my prayer, my plea is that, God, you may help us to take those little tiny baby, minute steps, Lord, into growing in that experience and growing in the experience of sharing Jesus. And so, God, as we continue to grow, as we continue to learn, as we continue to develop, I pray that by your grace and mercy, that you may lead us, that you may guide us, and that you may continue to show us the way so that we may be able to be the best stewards in creating space for you to move. Lord God, we thank you, we love you, and we pray this in Jesus' precious name. Amen. So again, tomorrow, 6:30, same time, same place.